Greetings, everyone. This is Jeff Wilkerson, Professor of Physics at Luther College, bringing you the next in our series of what to look for in the night sky. This time we're talking about the week of November 8th, 2022, and this is going to be a week about the moon. Big deal this week is going to be the total eclipse of the moon on the morning of November 8th. That's the night of November 7th into the morning of November 8th. And so the moon, for observers here in North America where I live, most everyone will be able to see the total phase, at least somewhat, of this total eclipse. And where I live in the central part of the United States, happens just before dawn in the morning there of the 8th, and it's well timed and well placed for me to be able to observe. So for me, again, this is in the morning, Tuesday morning, the 8th. For me, we will have the partial eclipse begin just after 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. We will have made the switch back to Central Standard Time by then, and it will enter the full phase sometime around 4:15 in the morning, and will last for about an hour and a half, with the switch in time is going to be starting to get a little bit light by the end of that time, I think. So that's what's going on as we can watch this total eclipse. Now remember, one of the things we think about is the geometry of orbits here. And you've got the Earth in orbit around the Sun, and if the Moon were in orbit in exactly the same plane, you would always be able to draw a line between the Sun and the Earth and the Moon whenever the Moon was full or the Moon was new, and we would have eclipses every month. We would have a lunar eclipse every month and a solar eclipse every month, but we don't have that because the Moon's orbit is tilted just a little bit, a few degrees, relative to the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, and so usually the Moon is above or below the Sun when you think about it that way, as it passes the Sun in the sky, or as the Earth passes the Sun in the sky from the Moon's vantage point. And so we don't get these kinds of eclipses all the time, but we do have one this month. And so one of the interesting things for me about this is to think about this. We talked about maybe just last month as the Moon passed by here, the Moon was going to blot out Uranus, but the Moon's tilt has changed enough. The tilt of the Moon's orbit has caused it to not want to pass over the top of Uranus this time by, but it's going to be within about 2 degrees when it's eclipsed at this point. What that allows us to do is to maybe find Uranus better this time. We talked about it last time. It was just too bright. The Moon was too bright to go out and see Uranus a month ago, but now with an eclipse, the brightness of the Moon is going to get knocked way down. It's going to blot out, and we ought to be able to see Uranus much better. It will be just a couple degrees above the Moon, and maybe above and just a little bit to the east of the Moon. And so remember, your finger held out at arm's length. We talk about this every week. Your finger held out at arm's length is about a degree. So just a couple finger widths from the top of the Moon, you can look for Uranus. Uranus will be right at naked eye visibility level. A pair of binoculars is probably what you want to use here. You get a pair of binoculars, you should see Uranus glowing right there above the eclipsed Moon. That's a fine thing to go look for. Now Uranus has a companion, a star right next to it, less than what is it, about less than a fifth of a degree. Okay, let's say that. Less than a fifth of a degree away from it, you'll see Uranus will be slightly fainter than Uranus. So you should see two objects right there together in your binocular field of view, and Uranus should be the brighter of those two objects. So that's something worth trying to do. Go out, enjoy the eclipse for what it is. Okay, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Don't tell anyone this, okay? Don't publish this anywhere out there. I find lunar eclipses not exactly boring, but I've seen enough of them in my lifetime that I don't always get out of bed to go look at them. Let's say it that way. And so this adds a little bit of interest to this lunar eclipse, is to say it's so close to Uranus, and Uranus has that fainter companion right next to it. Let's go see if we can find the planet there with the Moon. So that's what we got going on. One night later, the next morning on the 9th, the Moon will have moved over here, be sitting just below the Pleiades star cluster. Take your binoculars out. Again, the Pleiades is big and bright. You probably ought to be able to see a little bit of the Pleiades even with that terribly bright Moon next to it, but maybe not. So go ahead and take your binoculars out and enjoy the binoculars. They're great in binoculars anyway, the Pleiades. Open star cluster in Taurus. And so this is great to go out and look at that the next night on the morning of the 9th. And then on the morning of the 11th, it will have continued. The moon will have continued to wane and drift through Taurus there, and will be sitting just above Mars. So Mars will be about 3 degrees below and east of the moon at this time on the morning of November 11th. It depends where you are in the world, what time you can be able to get out and see the moon, where it would be relative to Mars. It'll be moving this direction. So if you live west of me in the time, in the daytime, in the 24-hour period that we're talking about here, if you live west, if it stays dark for you later and later and later, then the moon will be moving that direction. If, on the other hand, it was dark for you earlier, you live east of where I am, the moon will have been further back this direction. So all of this, it's not moving terribly fast, but it's moving enough to notice the moon is. So all of this depends a little bit on where you are and looking at this. But the moon should make a beautiful pairing with Mars. And again, there's a pretty bright star below Mars right there at the tail of the V of Taurus that's out there. So pay attention to that. Now, 2 days later, on the morning of the 13th, we're wrapping all the way around to where we'll be thinking about next week. By this point, where we're probably thinking about Leonid meteor showers. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about something else. Who knows? But 2 days later, then the moon will have waned further. I think by this point it's just under 80% full on the morning of the 13th, and it will be in Gemini. And Gemini has 2 bright stars, the twin stars, Castor and Pollux, and it makes a beautiful triangle there with the twin stars. It's about 6 degrees from Castor and Pollux. Castor and Pollux are just over 4 degrees separated there. So you're going to get the sense of the scale of that triangle, an isosceles triangle, not an equilateral triangle that way. So the moon will be sitting down here with the bright stars Castor and Pollux above there. So go out and enjoy the stars of Gemini as you watch the moon later in the week. And that's really all we got. Think one more time about the relative orbits, the tilt of relative orbits like that, because we think about the plane of the solar system, but things have inclinations. The orbits have inclinations to that plane. All the planets do and all the moons do. And it's defined by the Earth's orbit around the sun, and then everything else has a little bit of tilt relative to that. And we saw the moon scoot below Uranus here. When we said a month ago, it was right up on top of Uranus. And now we see the moon scoot above Mars. So just thinking in a north-south kind of way, we get a sense that Mars will look like it's below the moon on the 11th, and Uranus will look like it's above the moon on the 8th, and so you can start to get a sense of how the orbits of these planets and the moon are tilted a little bit to give the thickness to the disk of the Milky Way. So that's what we got. Go out and enjoy this. It's a great week for observing. Hopefully it's clear. We've had so much in the way of clear skies lately. Every morning I get up, I get to go out and look at the sky, and it's staying dark late, and I get to see the beautiful morning sky. Now, we're at that great time of year. I haven't watched it lately in the evening sky, but I see the Big Dipper in the evening, and I can still sometimes catch Arcturus as the handle of the Big Dipper arcs to Arcturus. But now when I get up in the morning, the Big Dipper's climbing high into the eastern sky, and Arcturus has cleared the hills for me. So now I'm starting to see Arcturus having wrapped around into the morning sky as I watch the handle of the Big Dipper arc to Arcturus. It looks like this. I should never try to freehand draw something. We learned that lesson, right? You say you arc down to Arcturus, and Arcturus is down that direction, and this is our Big Dipper up here. And so I'm seeing this now in the morning sky, where I've been seeing it in the evening sky, and I think at this time of year it's dark long enough I can see it, and this is far enough north for me that I can see it both in the evening sky and the morning sky. So this is a great thing. Anyway, I'm just telling you a little bit, rambling a little bit about what I've been observing in the morning as I go outside. I've been seeing the Pleiades very bright in the morning with Mars as well off to the east of the Pleiades in Taurus. So it's been fun to have just clear sky after clear sky after clear sky. That's going to break here at some point, but hopefully next week when we watch the moon doing this stuff, and particularly on the morning of the 8th, you all have clear skies. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll have something more for you next week.